Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are joined by Dean Linke. He is a veteran soccer play-by-play broadcaster on the Big Ten Network, but he doesn't just do soccer. He does like all these sports. I don't know how he does it. Dean, tell us a little bit about your background and what you're doing now and what you're most excited about.
Yeah, obviously it is an exciting time because the World Cup is returning for the first time since '94, which is kind of how I launched my career. But I do kind of want to start from the fact that I am from Ohio and I'm very proud of that. I'm from Gibsonburg, Ohio. Went to school in Fremont, St. Joe, went to college at Ohio University, got an internship my sophomore year at '89, Governor, and two governing bodies picked me out of Colorado Springs, canoe kayak and soccer. And I was a football, basketball, and baseball player at St. Joe where they still don't have soccer. And I'm like, well, at least soccer has a ball. And in '89, if you look back at the history of soccer, I really got lucky because in '89, we were qualifying for the World Cup for the first time in 40 years for the men. We were getting ready for the first ever Women's World Cup in '91. We were bringing in a new regime under Alan Rothenberg, whose only deficiency is he's a Michigan man, so we won't hold that against him. He went to law school, but he, brought the World Cup here to '94. Then he started Major League Soccer, where I became the director of communications. And all I really wanted to do, even at Ohio U, is be a broadcaster. Colorado was the last team named. Phil Anschutz, big name
Sure,
house,
I know that name.
you
Yep.
know, and he's like, Dean, I want you to be the GM. I was smart enough, Governor, to know that I wasn't smart enough to be the GM. So I said, I'll come as your number two guy under one condition, and that is if I can call your games. And then I was off and running. And the great thing about it, I think one of the second or third game that I did was at Ohio Stadium, which I grew up at. A guy that is from Gibsonburg married into my mom's family, blocked for Archie Griffin. So when I was 6 years old, I knew every single player on the Buckeyes, and Ohio Stadium was a shrine. Woody Hayes would visit Gibsonburg, Ohio, and we'd have a parade. So I'm really proud of my roots in Ohio, but then proud of kind of where it's taken me because now this is my 30th year as a broadcaster.
Amazing. Dean, so 94 was the last time we had World Cup. And so now we're about to embark on it. How do you feel the atmosphere is in the country? I don't hear much about World Cup. I'm at the gym. They're still talking about, this sport or that sport. But where are we in terms of the excitement that is going to greet this whole World Cup extravaganza?
That's the $1 million question, to be honest with you, Governor, because I think there's a little bit of sort of wait and see. I think we also want to make sure that the folks in DC are making sure people can get clearance to get over here. We all know about the ticket prices as well.
Well,
I think
let's talk about that. So is there a concern that these athletes will not be able to come in and play because of border restrictions? Is that
well,
legitimate concern?
I don't think legitimate, but I do think there's concern. I mean, I do think that it's going to be lifted in time. I think there at one point there was 11 countries that didn't weren't lifted off the asylum list, right? So I think that's now been curtailed, and there's not as many. I don't know. You probably know more about that than I do, even
No,
Governor.
I don't. No, I don't. That's why
Yeah.
we have you on, because you're the man that knows everything.
Well, I appreciate that. The thing is, it's going to be lifted. I've heard they're even going to lift it for Iran. There was talk that they were going to get rid of Iran and put in Italy, which would be somewhat blasphemous in that they've never done something like that before. So hopefully it all works out. I mean, look, for me, '94 was a utopia that shaped my entire life. Do I feel the same way about 2026? No, I don't. Just because I feel like FIFA's running this one differently. In '94, they handed Alan Rothenberg the keys. They started the organizing committee early. They moved their headquarters out to LA. They moved our World Cup team out to Orange County, California, and we lived there for 3 years and got ready. And it was a more kind of feel good mom and pop thing. And FIFA took their part, but then everybody that worked their tail off, they also got their part. I even did as the press officer of the team. My wife did, who was the protocol manager. I don't think it's going to be that way, Governor. So because of that, I don't have the same utopic feeling. Now, let me just tell you, I'm not going to miss a game as far as on TV, but I don't think I'll be rushing out to stadiums to be in the middle of that all without an official capacity. You know what I mean?
Dean, what is it going to cost? I've been reading that, they still haven't sold all the tickets, and so Taylor Swift comes out and decides she's going to have a concert, and people will, they'll fly to Europe to see her. So what is the situation now with ticket prices and attendance and all that?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you probably haven't, but the rest of us have been in Ubers and we've dealt with surge pricing. So I think it's going to be very much, geared around surge pricing as we get closer, which means some tickets are going to drop really, really low. The big games at, Giant Stadium, now MetLife Stadium, are going to jump really, really high. And then I think they're going to kind of meet in the middle at some point, Governor, somewhere halfway through it. The last World Cup in '94 that was held in the United States still is the most successful because we're the only country that has these big stadiums. And now we've added in 3 in Mexico and 2 in Canada. Because of that, the big stadiums, even if you don't totally sell it out, you're still going to get more than you would have at Qatar, for instance, in some of those smaller stadiums. So I still think it's probably going to be the most successful World Cup ever. It just doesn't totally feel like it just yet. But we're getting close to, I think, it feeling the way you want it to feel.
Well, what are the tickets going to cost? Let's get down to the do re mi here,
Yeah,
Dean. Come
yeah,
on.
great question. I mean, they're going to range from $1,100 to upwards of 10,000 plus, depending on what kind of experience you want to have. Now, does that mean that you couldn't get like a Senegal versus another, name small country, for a few $100s, and slip in there?
Dean, if I'm ever president, you're not going to be ambassador to Senegal after that remark, but go ahead. Go ahead. So a few $100 to go.
Right.
Okay. And how many venues is this going to be staged at?
Great question. So, for the first time ever, it'll be 3 countries involved. We've done some where we've had 2 countries. We had New Zealand and we had Australia involved, but this time it'll be Canada, Mexico, and the United States. So, Canada will have 2, Vancouver and Toronto. Mexico will have 3, Guadalajara, Mexico City, and Monterrey. And the U.S., they had 9 in '94. They'll have 11 this time. They are Atlanta, Boston, Dallas, Houston, Kansas City, LA, Miami, New York, New Jersey is 1, Philly, Seattle, and San Fran. So to me, the biggest omission, quite frankly, as a Midwest guy, is Chicago and Detroit. And I'm also surprised DC doesn't have a venue this time around, but really surprised by Detroit and Chicago. Because if you're in the Midwest,
No, you can't. I can't believe they're not going to be in Chicago. That's kind of crazy. Why?
I again, just pure speculation. I think it has a lot to do with the crime that the administration currently talks about in Chicago early on, and
But
then,
who picks it? Doesn't FIFA pick where they're going to be?
well, this World Cup started. The bid started back in like 16, I think, or 18, and then FIFA works collectively with each of the countries, Governor, and then they come down. So for whatever reason, Chicago decided not. They didn't want to be involved, so I was a little shocked by that. In '94, Chicago was the opening game. It was incredible. Oprah Winfrey was there, and it was crazy. Then the next day, the USA played at Pontiac Silverdome in Detroit, which was pretty cool to be in Detroit, which is pretty close to where I grew up in Toledo.
Well, that's interesting. So Chicago really didn't make a bid for it,
They
and
did not. They did it.
well, who do you look at as the favorites? Let's talk about the favorites here.
Yeah, well, Argentina is your reigning champs. Messi is 40 or just about 40, and he's the LeBron James of soccer. He's the true Benjamin Button, and I think because of that, Argentina's got to be considered again. They won it last year in Qatar. It was 3-3 penalty kicks. It was one of the greatest soccer games I've ever seen. France is in it every year. They beat Croatia in 2018. Germany is always there. They won it in 2014 over
And
Argentina.
give us some of the stars. Tell us some of the stars of these teams.
Okay, you got it. Well, Messi from
Yeah,
Argentina,
right.
right up there with Pele. Cristiano Ronaldo, who's also 30.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
he's with Portugal, so he's incredible.
And
So
how are they going to do? Portugal.
what? They've got a tough group, but they've got a great coach. I just interviewed their coach in January, Roberto Martinez, who was born in Spain, but really tied to Portugal and is a very famous coach. They're going to do well. And I think, if Portugal makes a deep run, everybody's going to be happy. The team that the entire country, I think, will get behind short of the U.S. is England. So in 94, Governor, England didn't make it. And that was kind of a big vacuum because no matter what, everybody just finds a way to root for England, and England kind of finds a way to take you just to the tipping point, but then just disappoint you,
Sort of like the Indians, yeah, or
Yes.
the Guardians, whatever we call them these
Yeah.
days.
Yeah. Speaking
Yeah.
of the Guardians, I'm doing a game tomorrow with Paul Shuey, who pitched for the Guardians at the Indians at the time for a long time. But yeah, it's very similar actually.
And so you're thinking, but you're not saying you think Germany will have a good team.
Germany, yeah,
Who else?
France, Germany, France,
Yeah, how about France? Who will be their star?
Mbappe. So Mbappe's one of
Yeah, he's been a star before.
he has, and he's played for all the big teams, and he's still really good. So really, most of the stars, Governor, are the same ones. There'll be some youngsters that England and
Now,
Germany.
Mbappe, he's not very old, is he?
Well, I want to say he's in his late 20s, early 30s.
And
So
he's a big, big star.
yeah, huge.
Well,
Yeah,
my wife and one of my daughters and their friend were in Spain. I think it was in Spain, and they went to see Ronaldo, and he was playing in Spain, and they took the train, and they almost missed their flight out of the country because they needed to see Ronaldo. I mean, people got to be really excited to see some of the great players. You want to see Messi one more time. You want to see Portugal. You want to see Ronaldo. You want to see Mbappe. It's sort of like a few weeks ago, I went to see Bob Dylan. You cannot not go to see Bob Dylan any more than you can miss these guys. Who else do we? How about Italy? Are they going to be any good this year?
they didn't make it, so that was the big thing. So
Ugh.
Trump was talking about bringing Italy in and kicking Iran out.
No, we're not doing that. So what about Germany? Who would be the big star in Germany?
Well, they have quite a few of them. I can't even just give you one name, John, because they're so loaded from front to back. They're so consistent, and they never have like a. I mean, they did when they had Lothar Matthäus and they had Franz Beckenbauer. Guys that could carry their name on their own that even came over to play in the NASL. This German team's a little bit different. They're not necessarily built with a Ronaldo or a Messi, but from front to back, they're really.
They're solid all the way along. No with superstar or a lot of superstars, none which outshine the other. And England, you think England's going to be pretty decent then?
I do. Yeah. I mean, England did really good in the Euros last year. They came so close to winning it all. They made it to the final and then lost. I can't even remember who they lost to because your focus is always on England, but England's going to be really good. They've got a good mixture of veterans that have been around for a long time, even guys that were back in the 2002 World Cup. And then they've got a good back then they were bringing up Beckham and Rooney and those guys. Those guys are long gone, but they have the future Beckham and Rooney's on that England team, which makes that team so fun.
Well, what about us? How are we going to do?
Yeah, that's the good question, and the big question because we've kind of gone up and down in how we're feeling about our team. I would say that most pundits would say it's been more down than up. I felt like as we were heading into the '94 World Cup, we were definitely trending up. We had a great first game against Switzerland. Then we beat Colombia, who a lot of people had picked to win the World Cup. And that was the first time we'd ever made it to the second round and got to play Brazil on the 4th of July, in the second round, which was amazing. I'm doing my best at avoiding the answer to the question. I mean, I don't think any of us have any idea. They almost have to steal a cliche, Governor. They got to capture lightning in a bottle, and they've got to come together like almost instantaneously because they won't have a lot of time. I think they're going to play Portugal one more time before the game, and I think there's a couple other games that they're going to slip in before they open up against Paraguay in the World Cup. But my real answer is probably the same answer. Even people that truly get paid to be an analyst, like Alexi Lalas, will tell you that they have no idea. But I'll use what Alexi Lalas said, he's also from Michigan, former Mac Herman Trophy winner, was on
Yeah,
that sports.
I know who he is. Right.
Yeah, okay. Sorry. He's basically saying US has no choice but to get out of the first round. So if they've got to lie, cheat, do whatever, they've got to figure out a way to get out of the first round and maximize what it will mean for this
And
country.
who do we look to be our star
So
or
Christian,
stars?
yeah, Christian Pulisic will go down as one of the greatest ever, probably even greater than Landon Donovan, just based on his international career. Currently playing for AC Milan. He's played in multiple countries over there. He is a superstar. I mean, he grew up at 4 years old, playing off his wall in Pennsylvania, and right away his parents sent him over to Europe. I think governor when he was 11. He's come back to be an impactful part of our team, but it really all kind of runs through him. Then Tyler Adams in the middle, Balagoon up top. In the back, they've got this outside back, Sergio Dest, who has played overseas, and everybody I mentioned plays overseas right now. We will have about 5 or 6 guys that play in MLS, which is exciting. We'll have one guy, Aiden Morris, who won an MLS Cup with Columbus, who's now playing overseas. He could make a difference, and the fact that he played for the Columbus Crew, I thought would interest you. I think he's a really good
Yeah,
player.
for
But,
sure.
but to answer your question, Christian Pulisic is the star. Weston McKennie and Tyler Adams, those are kind of the three main ones. And then I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure what they're going to do in goal, as they've kind of had a change in goal, but they're not 100% confident in it. And that's not a position where you want to be a little iffy on. And then I'm not 100% certain whether they're going to go 3 in the back or 4 in the back. And when they decide on how many they're going to go in the back, Governor, I don't know if they know who those 3 or 4 are going to be. And last time I checked, the old cliche, defense wins championships. I'm not sure about the D right now.
Gotcha. When you talk about Christian Pulisic, we've been following him. He started playing for a European team when he was, and playing a lot when he was wasn't he about 17 or 18? I mean, how
Yeah,
old was he?
well, he went over there when he was 12. So they
Right?
vetted him into the school soccer thing where, it's soccer probably 80% of the time and school 20% of the time. So he went over there in 12, and I think he started playing for Borussia Dortmund before he was 16, in Germany. And, now he's in Italy. He's been a couple other places as well. But, he truly became part of the culture over there.
How old is he now?
So great question. He's only in his mid 20s. He's still young. I don't even think he's 25 yet.
Do you think that he has realized you know, when people here don't know that much about hockey, not that much about soccer, they know about him. Do you think he's realized his potential, his greatness? I mean, we don't hear much because we're here and we're not over there. What's your sense of that? Does he still have a ways to go? What can happen with him?
Man, I love how you pose that question. A lot needs to happen because when you think about the way we kind of got on the shoulders of Landon Donovan, we got on the shoulders of Clint Dempsey, we got on the shoulders of Claudio Reyna, got on the shoulders of Tab Ramos over the years, guys that could truly carry your team, even against some of the best in the world. We had that ability to come up with a big goal in the last second, like we did down in Brazil in 2014, winning that game in the advanced round in the final seconds. I don't know if Christian, I mean, look, he's definitely feeling it. He's talking about it. I don't know if he's completely embraced it. And it's probably not fair of me to speak about it, but that's just my opinion. You asked me for my opinion. I think, Governor, he needs to embrace it. He needs to like do the LeBron James and say, I'm locked in. You know what I mean? And I'm locked in with
Right.
this team. And if he does that, the team will rally around him. If he doesn't, if he finds himself disappearing and just trying to, just slip over to the side, we're in trouble. And big.
Okay, so a couple things. It's interesting how you were talking about when you're in Europe, you go to these schools and you're there maybe 80% of the time doing soccer and then 20% doing your academics. And I understand that because we see that with tennis. I don't know that we see it with golf, but we see it. We certainly see it at tennis. What was his name? Bollettieri and the academy and all that stuff. What do they do there that breeds the soccer players that perhaps we are not doing here? Or are we catching up?
Well, I mean, what they do there, one is it's soccer, and then it's more soccer, and then more soccer, and then they might slip in a little bit of basketball and some of the other sports. So first off, out of the womb, I feel like the soccer ball is there, whether it's a boy or a girl, right? And whether it's the tiniest town in England or the biggest city in Spain, I feel like because of that, like it's in their blood, you know what I mean? So they're ready to go. And because of that, establishing the schools around the academies, and the academies is the biggest word that they do. And to be fair, in this country, we are starting to form academies. We are starting to form what are called like webinar schools where they do X amount of hours on the web and then they get out to the field and are training. And the key thing now with MLS teams that are doing that, most of those players, they're doing that to sell over to Europe, right? Because that's where all the money is if you hit the transfer window. So we're trying to get there. The thing is, over in Europe, Governor, they've been doing it for 100 years.
Yeah, we got to catch up. What would you say are when you think about a quarterback, okay, in football, they say they can do the reads. Somebody could come out of college, they could have a good arm, they could be able to run, but it always gets down to can they do the reads? So when we think about soccer and we think about Ronaldo or we think about Messi or we think about Mbappe or any of these greats, the great of the greats, what do they have that others do not have?
Great question. I mean, first of all, they truly have eyes in the back of their head. So they know just by playing with these players for so many years, they know where they're going to be, Governor, and they know when they're making their run. And then with that, they can time the ball with the inside of their foot or the outside of their foot to play it in the space. And they also know how when they give it up, and that's one of my biggest critiques even in today's basketball. If you give it up, if you just move a little bit, you'll get it back and probably find yourself in a pretty good spot. That's what they have. They have the ability to put it on a pinpoint pass. Then they have the ability to move off of it to get themselves in a spot to either score or make a better pass for a better shot.
So you mean like hockey,
A little
knowing where
bit.
the puck is, knowing where the ball is, the soccer ball.
Exactly. And
And
no,
is it an instinct? Can you of course can teach it, right? But some can learn it better than others. Is that the way it looks?
I think it's more instinctual than teaching. I mean, we poured a lot of money into coaching education in this country and doing our best at teaching, but I think the best players instinctually have this natural ability to trap a ball, shoot a ball, pass a ball, all the intricacies you do. And you know how they did that, Governor? They spent hours by themselves just
Well, that's why I say, Dean, I think we credit too much to instinct and not enough to learning. And I think that, okay, so some people instinctually, or somebody may have a little bit more talent, but it's how you develop that talent. You could have a zillion people. You hear about great basketball players on the hard courts of New York, I mean, as great as anybody has ever seen. However, they never put the skills into play, and so they never made it. So I think it's got to be really the hard work that ultimately lets them rise to the top. Um, let's talk about goaltending because when you think about that, is that the hardest position in soccer?
I don't know if it's the hardest, but it might be the most important. I mean, one of the great things the U.S. has been lucky over the years. I think we've had some of the best goalkeepers the game's ever produced. In '90 we had Tony Miola, who was also the captain, but you had Brad Friedel, who's an Ohio boy, by the way, born in Solon, Ohio on May 18th. So he's got a birthday coming up. And we had Casey Keller. So we had those three from 1988 until I want to say 2014, and then we turned it over to Tim Howard, who was known as the Secretary of Defense. So, I mean, we've always had really good goalkeepers. All of them were incredible athletes. Like Miola was drafted by the Yankees, tried out for the New York Jets. So, they're phenomenal athletes. They can use their hands, Governor, as you know, so they can do a lot more. And Miola, he could throw the ball, which you're allowed to do. He could throw the ball as far as he could kick it. So if he got it and he was at the top of the 18, he could throw it 50 yards and put it right on the dime. And this time around, we've got Matt Freeze and we've got Matt Turner. So we got Freeze and Turner, and then we've got some really athletic goalkeepers that I would love to see in there and give their chance. But I think it's down to those two. Turner was the goalkeeper in the last World Cup. Freeze is only playing in MLS, but has kind of established his name. Kind of a big guy. I just don't know if he's capable of making that really big save. You got to make one big save every game that maybe you shouldn't make. But in order to advance in the World Cup, you got to have one big save.
Do you see soccer exploding in the United States? In other words, you see the spread of these of the MLS teams, right? You see that, and I hear a lot of people talking about it. A lot of parents talking about it. Where the transition, not the trans, but the what's the right word I'm looking for? The As we've seen these things grow, okay, where are we today in terms of that sport sort of taking over? Because the NFL's I mean, you get 300-400 people going to a draft, right? I mean, it's like nothing we've ever seen. What about soccer? Where is it?
Yeah. So I want to go back to one thing you did ask about.
Progression is the word. I mean, the progression of the game.
Yes, I wanted to hit on something progression when you asked about it not being instinctual, and I think you're right. So one of the things that is happening is there's a couple of youth leagues. It's called that one's called the ECNL, Elite Clubs National League, and I think for the women it's the best in the world, which probably makes sense because we're the best in the world, right? So in order to be the best in the world on that stage, you got to be pretty good at a young age, and the ECNL has been around since the early 2000s, and they're producing all these superstars on the women's side. Now on the men's side, they're making progress, and then U.S. Soccer's getting more involved to work with them and work with MLS. So back to your point, you're right. It's got to be less instinctual, and they got to be teaching the right things. I think remember I started in 1989. I think soccer's already blown up in this country. I mean, Seattle packs it out, Columbus right there in right where you live
Right.
packs it out. Cincinnati packs it out, which is amazing to have two teams in our little great state of Ohio that absolutely pack it out. There's a couple sleepers, John, that don't do as good a job, but they'll sort those out. I mean, there's 30 teams in 30 years. When I started back in 1996, leaving MLS as the director of communications to go to Colorado, we literally had to bring in the village people and the monkeys to get people to come to the games. You know what I mean? And that's not the case anymore. So I actually think, Governor,
No, you get the Savannah Bananas.
right,
No, you
exactly.
don't. I know. You got it.
I feel like we're already there. There is
Yeah.
going to be a boost. I don't think it's going to be the same boost we had from 94 that created the foundation and all this extra money to make sure inner city kids get access, but hopefully they figure out a few things. I'm going out to San Francisco on May 8th to do a reunion for America Scores, which raises money for underprivileged kids. And it'll be a reunion of the 94 team where the coach will be there and Alan Rothenberg will be there. And I think 15 of the 22 players will be there. So I can't wait for that. And we'll talk, they'll tell a lot of stories, but I'll look around the room and I'll see all of those gentlemen that were part of that 94 World Cup that now have key roles, whether it's on TV or in
Right.
individual roles with
Right.
U.S. Soccer. So that's what this World Cup will bring. It'll bring more and more qualified people to.
Yeah, more excitement. So, when I see kids that play basketball, little kids, I always say to them, what's the most important thing you can learn? And a lot of them will say, well, most of them will say, learn to shoot. I said, no, no, no. That is not it. The most important thing you can learn in basketball here in the 21st century is how to dribble. And if you watch the great, great players, whether it's in the NBA or the NC2As or even, I mean, I'd stop at those levels. The one thing they can do that is mind boggling, that allows them to have an ability to transition, is their ability to handle that ball, to dribble that ball, and to learn how to pass. I don't know whether you agree with that or not, but if you do, what would be the same thing if you were talking to a 9-year-old about soccer? What would you tell them that most important skill is?
You nailed it. Dribbling is the most important skill. So to be able to get out of tight spaces via dribbling and a tight, crisp pass, and then moving into more space, you nailed it. And we think about the players that we got excited about when we started this interview. Messi, Mbappe, Ronaldo, Neymar. I think is going to get back on the Brazilian team now because
Yeah.
he's healthy, which is really really good. And Neymar's talking about coming to MLS, so that'll
Yeah,
be.
we can't forget Neymar. That was a big mistake. We were going to be getting calls for that one. You're right. There's another one.
Yeah, and all of them can get, they can get out of a phone booth with the soccer ball at their feet, you know what I mean? And so,
Amazing.
yeah, you got to have that ability for sure.
All right, Dean. So you're doing not just soccer, but you're doing basketball and I mean, how many sports do you broadcast?
Yeah, so this will be I just signed for my 20th year on the Big Ten now. First game was at Ohio State against West Virginia. Then the next day, App State beat Michigan in football. That's how the network launched. And ironically, I did that game um, with Tim Street, who now is a big hitter with the Ohio High School Athletic Association. And I'm going to come in and do the softball championships in a couple weeks at Firestone Stadium in Akron, where Babe Ruth played. So very much looking forward to that. And again, my Ohio ties keep me
Right.
coming
I got
back.
I got all
Uh,
that, but I want to get to you. So you do field hockey, you do
okay.
basketball, you do softball, you do baseball, you do all this stuff. So here's the question. If you watch some of the great announcers, broadcasters, they can go so deep. I mean, my buddy Clark Kellogg, you watch him do the
Love
do
him.
March Madness. They know everything about these players. I mean, and you're doing multiple sports. How do you learn who all these players are, particularly the impact players? How do you do that?
Yeah, it's a lot of studying. I mean, I do feel like I'm still in school because I definitely do want to have information on all of them. And then I think the other thing I do, Governor, is when that game's over, I wipe it out so that I can move into the next game. Because I really didn't answer your question because I do field hockey, women's soccer, men's soccer, volleyball in the fall. Then I move into women's gymnastics, men's gymnastics, cross country in the winter. Then I move into softball, baseball, women's lacrosse. I'll do the rowing championships for the
Okay.
Big Ten. And then, yeah, and then I do the two pro teams in Carolina as well. So
Well, Dean, what do you know about rowing? You don't know squat about rowing. I mean, how do you be able to get on there and talk about rowing?
my wife rode at Franklin and Marshall in Pennsylvania.
I'm
So,
sure I'm sure she did, but you certainly didn't. I mean, come on. No, I mean seriously, it's amazing. And you just have to study sport after sport after sport. Is that what it is? And then you talk, how do you do it?
well, the biggest thing I do is I stay in my lane. So, like for a while there, I was doing gymnastics. In fact, one of my fondest memories was at St. John Arena. We did the Big Ten championships, and my analyst was Shawn Johnson. This was right after she won Dancing with the Stars, and I think
Right.
years removed from her winning the gold medal. So she was more famous for Dancing with the Stars. The point is that story, Governor, is I let Shawn talk about all the technical stuff. I make sure that they know when it's John Kasich's turn to go. Everybody knows his name, where he
Right.
come from, what his high score is, what he did in the last score. And I don't pretend to know this certain move or that certain move. I just stay in my lane and
Gotcha.
let the experts be experts.
And I want to thank you for your time.
All right, awesome. Pleasure being with you.
Okay, Dean, thank you. We'll see you.